Happy Saturn's Day, collective. Hope everyone's enjoying the weekend. As you can see, I visited the floral section today, running some errands, and I did something a little different and got a bundle, a very healthy size bundle of eucalyptus. And look at the movement of it. Aside from the color, it's got these like maroon stems, some of them red, maroon, and then of course the blue green color of the leaves. You hear the rustling of them. It's like a multi-sensory um, little delight here, honestly. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard, but you can take like a small bundle, like wrap like some twine or some sort of rope or like something like that around a couple of stems and hang it upside down from your shower head, kind of like against the shower wall. And I mean, just imagine the aromatherapy delight that you experience by doing that. I might do that with a couple of them, but I'm just going to put them in this vase for now. Just some water. And because there's plenty of them, I can always remove a couple and play around with some other uses. Apparently, eucalyptus, if I remember correctly, they are imported from Australia to California, like in large numbers. They were to help protect orange groves. And I mean, everyone's familiar with eucalyptus in terms of like the sort of aromatherapy uses of them, in terms of like you go to the spa, you very much can almost be guaranteed to encounter eucalyptus scented something. But also, in like cold remedies, like in cough drops, like the extract, lots of cough medicines for congestion and whatnot. And then in terms of the more, I guess, like mystical uses, apparently it is good for kind of warding off bad psychic energy. So it's said to, if you want to help like kind of cleanse an environment, a high combat environment, or say you've got like an office with a lot of like conflict and like verbal sparring and even physical sparring, any space to where conflict has sort of tainted the environment. I mean, there's no shortage of those, honestly, if you look around. Um, it's said that it might be of some benefit to slip in some eucalyptus bundles in there. Now, it's worth a try, honestly. I don't really know. Honestly, it could just boil down to the fact that it has a very calming, relaxing scent that we can all accept, when you go find it in the spa and all that. But if you just kind of imagine how that can carry over in ways that, you don't have to go to the spa to find a group of people that are looking to relax or, kind of dispel sort of anxiety and bad vibes, so to speak. So I don't know. Maybe next time you're at the store and you're passing by the section with flowers, maybe switch it up. Grab a bundle of eucalyptus, put some out on your desk at work or some main area like a break room, anywhere where people will gather or pass by. See what happens. Aside from it being just really attractive, if nothing else, having this out will almost guaranteed have someone stopping by and kind of going, wow, what is this? Oh, eucalyptus? Oh, this is nice. Sort of like a little moment of zen for you and whoever is passing by. Sometimes just having something beautiful out, like a plant on your desk or some flowers. Sometimes it's enough to just make everyone in the environment snap out of that sort of a zombified productivity state. And sometimes that's enough, right? So anyways, here's the eucalyptus bundle. I'm not really sure what the longevity is of it in water. I guess we're going to find out together. But I can't help but think it would probably be a little bit longer than, some flowers. Who knows? We'll see. Generally, the rule is like, you don't have to be perfect about it. But when I have like fresh cut flowers, I try to remember to change the water out. I mean, at least every 2 to 3 days. I mean, usually I just look at it and if it's like looking a little cloudy, it's time to dump out and rinse, put some new water in. But generally, that's just going to help prolong the life of them. You always want to do cold water. And then if they're starting to look worse for wear, say like in a week or so, a lot of times I'll go in, same with flowers, and I'll go in and I'll do a fresh cut, like at the bottom, just trim off a little bit of the stem, do a horizontal cut. You always want to do a horizontal cut because it increases the surface area for the water to enter. That's just the general rule for like taking cuttings from plants or any sort of cut flowers. You want to do a diagonal cut, just for anyone that didn't know that. But yeah, if these were starting to look a little bit like struggly in a week and sort of water clouding it more frequently, I might break it up too. I might take like a smaller bundle and like cut some diagonal cuts, make them shorter, put them in like a smaller jar or something somewhere else. And then, freshen these up by, of course, freshening the water, do a diagonal cut and, seeing what happens. Just why not experiment? So anyways, there's our eucalyptus. As you can see, we have out front the Hermit card. It's a pretty simple one. This is pretty kind of a simple message we're going to cover today on why the Hermit's there. So if you saw my video on I Can Buy Myself Flowers, I have in the foreground the Nine of Pentacles. And I very lightly touched on the numerology of 9, talking about how 9 is essentially generally a number of wholeness, like isolation, wholeness by oneself, like nearing completion. It's like finality without completion, if that makes sense, or nearing finality or nearing completion. I don't know, that depending on how you want to look at it. But it's essentially standing in one's own, whether energetically or otherwise, or in isolation, and being your own source. Like it's like, and I think the reason that we don't use completion for 9, we use that for 10, because we do need other people. It doesn't mean that you have to have a romantic partner, but we do need other people. But in order to get to 10, you have to master 9. 9 is sort of being self-sufficient in one's own energy, without anybody else, extracting what you need from within instead of looking externally. And I think that this is an important, I think, theme for everybody, especially now, in this era where we've got what seems to be, more digital connectivity than ever, but just this like pervasive loneliness, right? I mean, it's almost palpable, especially if you're like a very sensitive person. There's a lot of loneliness everywhere. And as I've mentioned in other videos, you don't have to be isolated to be lonely. You can have roommates or a partner or friends, coworkers, and you can still feel lonely. And The Hermit card is here. It's a number 9, so looping back into the 9 of Pentacles. I even mentioned the Hermit card there. The difference between the Hermit card being number 9 and the 9 of Pentacles being one of the minor arcana and just representing one of the 4 elements represented in the minor arcana, which are pentacles for earth, swords for air, wands for fire, and cups for water, emotion. But we've got our major arcana cards, and those are numbered starting at 0. And 0 is a card known as the Fool, and we'll get to that in another video. But a good way to think of the major arcana cards are, it's essentially known as it's like the hero's journey, but it's called the Fool's journey. That's why the Fool, it shows like a character standing on the edge of a cliff, sort of like literally just foolhardy, ready to jump into some new journey, some call to adventure, without a care in the world, carrying nothing but his experiences, no baggage from before. But that's why it's 0. And then like the Fool's journey goes on with the rest of the major arcana cards. So this is number 9 in the Fool's journey, the Hermit. He's gone through cards 1 through 8 to get to 9. And the Hermit's a pretty straightforward card in terms of the symbolism. It shows an old man, wearing like a hooded cape, and he's got a staff, which sort of depicts like a degree of power, but also like, if you really just a rudimentary look at it, you'd be like, oh, it's an old man with a walking stick. So, and it's clearly an older person, with the white hair and whatnot. So it suggests wisdom, but wisdom gained from a period of isolation, deliberate isolation. And you might say that the Hermit knows the difference between loneliness and being alone. The Hermit is deliberately in isolation for purposes of self-mastery. The Hermit is looking within for everything that he needs. Now, he's got a lantern just directly in front of him, and the lantern is all he needs. It suggests like a period in the dark, and of course, literally, but also metaphorically, right? And the lantern is just bright enough to light just sort of like the step right in front of him. It's not going to illuminate everything in the distance, because that's not what the Hermit is concerned with. The Hermit is concerned with what's right in front of him in his period of isolation and sort of reflection. And I think it's a really good card for this period right now, aside from it being like our kind of precursor to the dark, cold months that often feel, I don't know, depending on who you are and what your life is like, they can feel isolating in ways, but also lonely, and also they just invite reflection, do they not? And I think that there's this pressure sometimes, especially around the holiday, to be like, oh, I gotta have, I'm gonna, that FOMO. It's like you almost feel this call to go within sometimes, that it's like the pace. That's really what nature's pace is. Like when you look at what the trees do, and like they go through these magnificent color changes, this like sort of metamorphosis, and then the leaves fall and it goes dormant, right? And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the tree. The tree is just, the tree is almost in its own period of like dormancy for purposes of building itself up for the initiation to action in the spring. It's reserving its energy, the winter is cold, and you can't deplete what often feels like very limited reserves that we all are sometimes running on. And so I don't know, I wanted to, two reasons, talk about the Hermit, aside from what I sense is like among the collective, a sense of loneliness, but also like looking externally for what to do, you know, like whether it's in somebody else or whether it's you turn on the news or you turn on, you know, you open social media, and it's almost like whether you acknowledge it or not, is a part of you not looking for a cue for like, okay, what's next? Like, does everyone else feel that sort of, you know, suspension? You know, sometimes that's kind of like what's running in my head. Anyone else feel that? Of course, intuitively, I kind of know the answer to that, but it's also like, as humans, you know, we are social, and so yeah, we do need each other. But in order, like I've said in the I Can Buy Myself Flowers video, in order to really effectively show up for one another and be a part of a system of interdependency versus codependency, we need to show up for ourselves um, in a way that often is undetectable from the outside looking in, right? I mean, the Hermit, you know, if you're in Hermit mode, you're still going to go through your little rituals and go to the grocery store and, you know, go out in public to handle your business. But you might find that you're spending most of your time, your free time at home and, you know, cutting up your onions, you know, preparing things for yourself to nurture yourself for the week ahead. Um, you know, maybe reserving like a certain slot of the day once or twice a week to like correspond with people, you know, get to people who have texted you or emails or whatever, because those connections are important. But, you know, a lot of people who can probably relate, we all have friends that like kind of understand, you know, I saw your text, but they can expect that I'll get back to them within a couple of days. Or, you know, it's almost like everyone sort of knows they've probably got this going on or that going on, or maybe they're just, you know, in a period of reflection and healing, going through their own things, and everyone works on their own timeline. But I think this time of year, we all sort of, we know everyone's busy, and there's also this inclination to um, keep things to ourselves because we assume everyone's too busy or doesn't want to hear it. But we're still seeking something externally, right? Like, it's like we're keeping to ourselves without going within, if that makes sense. Thereby depriving ourselves of the actual benefit of isolation. You know, it can be productive, is what I'm saying. You can sort of slow things down, get at the pace of the trees and things outside of you, take your cue from them, and just go within, you know, reserve your energy, and stop looking externally for a cue, because you're not missing anything. You're not missing anything. Just know that. So, I mean, it's easier said than done in terms of putting into practice. We all, I mean, we're all guilty. It's sometimes you sit there and you feel, you know, I've gotten all these things done for myself or whatever, and or you have these like aspirations for like, you know, I really want to start doing this for myself or that, and you feel it very deeply and strongly, but we're wired to still seek something external, um, and it generally leaves us wanting, right? I mean, we open social media, one of the many apps, or we turn on the TV, and we're like seeking something, but it never is provided, right? Like, and then we sit there and we go, what is it that I was saying I wanted to do for myself this weekend again? You know, you almost forget. You're like in that fog of almost like sensory overload, but it's really not even like sensory overload. It's just like input overload. It's like a dopamine overload from, you know, scrolling or changing channels, but mostly, you know, in the modern age, scrolling. Sometimes a mix of both. And it's like we're seeking more and more external input, and the more external input in terms of like digital spaces that we consume, it seems to do like less and less, like diminishing returns, I guess. And it's really hard because we're humans, so like we have like established these like patterns in our brains that we've now set ourselves up to have to break. And that is the challenge, right? Like most people sincerely want to, like, you know, do X, Y, or Z in the external world, but it's almost like over a period of time, a certain behavior repeated is now a thing that you first have to tackle to like break, like to rewire yourself before you can actually like put into action something in the 3D world. So that's kind of what the hermit mode um, that I guess I invite you to consider is all about. It's like sort of going back to basics, you know, stripping away all of the superfluous things that, I don't know, not necessarily fill up your day, but maybe take up what free time you do have, and just sort of like strip it all back and be like, you know, consider all the streaming services out there. Say you really want to adapt to like live on less. Um, One, because you're like, I don't even have time to watch all these things. And how did I get to the point to where I have like 5 automatic debits from my bank account with like all these different streaming services? Like I don't even know what's on what anymore. I guarantee you that more people watching this can relate to that than not. And then you do the math and you're like, wow, that's like, if you're lucky, like $100, maybe more, depending on how in the hellscape you are. Um, and you think, I'm not getting, what is this $100 a month getting me? And it often the answer is like not much. Even if you do open up the thing and turn something on, are you ever really just watching something without your phone in your hand anyways, right? I mean, so I guess just inviting you to consider, where are my resources, both energetic and money? Where are my pentacles going right now? And of those places, what's giving me something from that? Because after all, to get the money to pay for those things, you've had to give a part of yourself, you know, in an environment that's probably not like your first choice, you know, whether it's workplace or odd jobs, whatever. You've had to expend something of yourself in order to have the money to put to these other things that are then consuming energy that you probably don't have, like in ways that isn't giving back, right? And so um you know, this isn't some like call to get off the grid and, you know, cancel all your little forms of joy and guilty pleasure. Like that's not it at all. I guess just asking you to ask yourself, what of those things that my hard-earned resources are going to sustain, what are actually giving me something in return, right? um, and hermit mode, when we deliberately choose to like use these kind of cold months where the days are shorter and colder, to do that kind of reflecting, I think that that's also setting an intention, whether you see it that way or not, for next year, right? I mean, there's all this pressure to like set a New Year's resolution or whatever. I'm like very much anti that, to be honest. In fact, like the way I look at it, like and the way the seasons actually run, if you're actually going to set a resolution, it would make way more sense to do so in the fall, personally. And if you watch the video on elements, modalities, and group dynamics, and I explain the cardinal, immutable, fixed energies in each zodiac sign and the archetype associated with it, you would understand more about why I say that. But either way, January 1st is an extremely arbitrary, in terms of energetically, time to put pressure on yourself to like all of a sudden be a whole new person. I mean, it actually doesn't make sense at all. And I think anyone who's tried the whole New Year's resolution game can attest to that personally, about how definitely energetically, like, you feel this like the same person on December 31st, January 1st, January 2nd, January 3rd. That's normal. I would say that if you really want to start seeing a material difference in your world in the year of 2024, it's the little, like, sort of mundane tweaks that you start to make in the fall and in the winter, like the deliberateness with which you act or don't act in this period of time is more so related to, like, the things in your life that unfold or don't, or improve or don't, come the next year. So I invite you to kind of look at this as an opportunity, this period of time, in that way, because, well, without getting too in the weeds of it, the transits of the rest of the year, including this weekend, are challenging. They're going to feel very heavy, and that's because primarily, especially like right now, we do have Venus in Libra, which is an air sign, but that will change once Venus, leaves Libra, and goes into Scorpio, which is a water sign, which I've covered, fixed water. But basically, the way that we end up finishing up the year is just like all heavier energy, earth and water. And that's just going to feel heavier, especially based on like where the respective planets are as we finish up the year. And, the holidays can already be triggering for people, especially depending on the events of your life in the year leading up to them. And so the reason I talk about these transits, you don't have to like become all into astrology because of these videos, nor does it really matter to me, if you do, or how much of it you take to heart or investigate further, or whatever. I use what it is that I know and study and have studied for long enough, from a very scientific approach, a very like essentially using what I learned in law school, the way to really get familiar with information. I approach it the same way, and I generally don't bother to talk about things that I don't know about. In fact, it's usually the opposite. I usually talk myself out of sharing things that I actually have a lot of expertise on, because I'm wired to think I always need more education, more classes, more credentials, overlooking the value of my life experience thus far, and of the credentials I actually have thus far. And so I share with you these things about transits because I suspect that you otherwise would not be aware that a heaviness and a sort of, especially emotionally, and sort of feelings that you might not understand where they're coming from. I don't want people walking around who already have their own challenges in life, and maybe their own despair that they're dealing with for whatever reason. I don't want you to think that there's something wrong with you. That's the main thing. I want you to know that, you might be a lot more sensitive than you realize. You might be more attuned to like the collective consciousness or subconscious, however you want to look at it, than you realize. And that is a strength of yours, but it is a hard thing to carry. So I say today, specifically, I've talked in one video about the Mars and Scorpio energy, how to channel the energy of Mars and Scorpio, which you can go back and watch that. But so Mars is still in Scorpio right now, but what we have going on in the sky that definitely is challenging energy is right now today, We have a direct opposition. So what's an opposition? It's exactly how it sounds. It's Mars is in Scorpio right here, and then if you're picturing a wheel, like the birth chart wheel, zodiac wheel, a snapshot of the sky, you have Mars in Scorpio right here, and then directly across from the wheel, 180 degrees, you've got Uranus in Taurus. So they're directly opposed at the same degree, 21 degrees. And an opposition in astrology is generally known as a challenging aspect. An opposition is a tension. And I've talked about oppositions briefly in other videos regarding other planets, but also pointing out that, have you ever noticed that with a tension, so yes, a challenging placement of an opposition, which creates tension between two opposing energies, that also has the potential to create clarity, right? I mean, because sometimes you have to separate these energies and have them facing one another down, both in their full glory, to really gain a sense of clarity in your own life, right? Like if you're picturing yourself in the middle of that opposition standing there, you're feeling them tug on you, right? Like imagine you're like having your arms tugged in both directions. That forces you, for better or worse, and usually it's a period of discomfort. That's why we call them challenging placements. But a period of discomfort generally is your natural way of being forced to get some shit straight, is it not? Get a sense of clarity about why that feels challenging to you and what you need to tweak on either end of the energy, because all energies have I guess a dark and a light side of expression to them, right? Like Scorpio energy, like I've said, is very much known. It's fixed water. It's very much known to be sort of like deep emotional, like the emotions run deep and they kind of fester and sit there. And, it's kind of notoriously the archetype of like, ruminating on feelings or perceived slights and having a very difficult time moving on from them. And, we all have the archetype of Scorpio in us. You don't have to have any planets. You don't have to be You don't have to be born in Scorpio season or have Scorpio moon or a rising or whatever to carry the archetype of Scorpio within you. We all have them all. They just are expressed in different areas of our lives in ways that, unless you've had your birth chart done, you're just unaware of. So it's just like all energies, Scorpio has a shadow side, I guess, and a light side in terms of like positive, way of expression versus like the more negative ways of expressing itself. So I want you to, if you feel that pull of energies, which is also magnified by the fact that the moon has just, recently moved into the sign of Scorpio as well. So while it's not exactly conjunct those things, we are going to have coming up on the 13th, November 13th, 2023, we're going to have a new moon. And for anyone that doesn't know, a new moon is where in the sky, the sun and the moon are sitting right next to one another. So, a new moon necessarily, if we're going to have a new moon in Scorpio, that means it's going to be at the exact same degree as the sun. I believe it's going to be at 20 degrees. So you're going to have the sun and the moon right next to each other, side by side in Scorpio. And then two degrees away, we're going to have Mars. So all of those things on the day, the 13th of the new moon in Scorpio, will be sort of in that cluster where Mars is now, that I've just described, opposing Uranus and Taurus. So today, to review, you feel the tension of Mars, the planet of like, action, initiation, but also conflict, war, like sometimes violence, just sparring, arguments, cataclysm. You feel the tension of that with the planet opposite in Taurus of Uranus. And Uranus, which we'll cover more extensively in another video, is the planet associated with like upheaval, sort of. It's like the rebel. It's an innovative planet. It's sort of like a in an instant type change sometimes, like a clap of lightning or thunder. It just like all of a sudden everything's changed. And it's I read in a it's associated, like I said, with like futuristic thinking, sort of like turning the status quo on its head, which in some contexts is good, and other times it's quite frightening. So when you have those tensions, in the sky of what the archetype of Mars is and the archetype of Uranus, you're like, oh wow, great, like the planet of like war, conflict, violence, opposing the planet of like surprise, nothing's the same. And if you really look around in the world, I think that should resonate with like an example of these energies playing out in events on the like macro level, and even in your own life, maybe the micro level. Maybe you are experiencing conflict in your relationships or at work, or just like internally, like with what is required of you every day in your life, and what you feel like you're getting in return. Like, are you satisfied with that? Does that feel in alignment with who you feel deeply that you're supposed to be while you're here on this earth? So if you feel that way and you're just walking around thinking, what's wrong with me? Like, why? I need to get my shit together. Why does everyone else seem to have it figured out? Everyone else does not have it figured out. I'm going to tell you right now. Maybe your problem, or I should say strength, is that you just never got good at masking. And I say, if that's true, then you're already further along in progress than you realize. Don't waste your precious energy masking. If you, in fact, you want to just be totally audacious, maybe just start talking more openly about these tensions that you feel inside with your friends, or honestly with anyone that you come across, and just start having kind of an organic conversation starts. Maybe don't bother with small talk. I mean, I wouldn't recommend just like going to the Walgreens and like putting it on the cashier, what's keeping you up at night. But if you are somewhere in public and, say you're at a coffee shop or at a park and someone just starts shooting the shit with you and you're really clicking, just be as close to your authentic self as you can, because I feel like you will be surprised when you let yourself do that, at how someone else will see that as like an invitation and a cue to do the same. And before you know it, you're having an authentic exchange with somebody that you might not ever talk to again. It doesn't matter. That's going to do something for you, and that will resonate with you, and that will resonate with them. And even if you guys go your separate ways, after having like a 10-minute random conversation at the local museum or something, that person carries that exchange with them, and you've carried that exchange with you. And whether you realize it or not, you feel a little bit closer to understanding like why it is that we arguably are all here anyways. Like, so this is why I talk about hermit mode, because the good thing about hermit mode is when you do decide to go out in public, just for your sort of run of the mill things, errands or whatever, I find that when you have spent your personal time back at home in hermit mode, like in a deliberate contemplative state of isolation, I feel you're more, I don't know, like in tune. When you do go out, your antenna, it's like a little bit more clear, because a lot of the background noise, the distractions, you've eliminated. So if you really want to maybe start to see things from a new perspective, including the people like that are in your city, um, maybe like eliminate some of the noise that's there in your everyday life that you don't realize is there, or at least take a break from it, step back from it, and then try to. There goes my bear. Um, it's okay, bear. But try to engage with the world around you with that sort of wisdom that your hermit mode has brought into your life. Um, with that, I'll close by including you guys in a milestone when I went out. So I've definitely been in hermit mode in the last couple of days, and this weekend especially. But I went out, and I've talked about milestones in my Empress video. And today is Mr. Jinx, the other dog, the one that's not barking like a naughty girl. It's his birthday. And, you know, it was kind of, it was something that I knew I had to be deliberate about, because this is the first year to where the person that used to live here and, you know, used to call Mr. Jinx like his dog as well, that was like a thing, like a ritual, a tradition for either of the dogs' birthdays. One of us, or sometimes both of us, would go to like the local pet store and buy like a toy or some treats for both of the dogs to share, or something. So it was hard. You know, I knew I wasn't going to miss the ritual of his birthday, but it was like I had to kind of be deliberate today when I woke up, and I had to go, you're going to go to the pet store. You know, you're going to go, we're not going to miss Mr. Jinx's 13th birthday. And so that's what I did. I got myself ready and got excited and got myself, you know, gingerbread, oat milk, chai drink. And I just got myself some eucalyptus and a couple things at the store. And I went to the pet store and I got him a new toy, and I got like a bag of treats for them both to share, and then some like beef and pork, like jerky sticks for them. Just going through the ritual, even though it's just me in my hermit mode. Um, you know, when you are stripping away the things, the noise, the superfluous things that you don't need, that has a way of really highlighting the things that are essential, like the rituals that are indispensable. And it makes you appreciate them more. It makes them feel like more sacred in a way. So that's what the milestone today was. It was the first birthday that we had where it was just me and Bear and Mr. Jinx, and it was special and it was sweet and it was everything that it's always been. And that's because I had to make the decision that that's what it was going to be. You know, couldn't look to any external cues. No one was going to tell me to go to the pet store and make sure I got something for Mr. Jinx's birthday, because honestly, the only other person that would know that it was Mr. Jinx's birthday isn't here anymore, and arguably, you know, isn't really concerned with Mr. Jinx's birthday anymore. And that's fine, because I am. That's all he needs. He just, you know, in showing up for the dog and his birthday, I am in turn showing up for myself and those rituals that I hold sacred to my life, and therefore to what it is that propels and fills me moving through this holiday season and into next year. So on that note, I think I'm going to have to go tend to these dogs, maybe get another birthday treat out, and get to my creation. I was chopping onions because I'm going to make some sort of chicken soup. I'm not sure what kind yet. So I'm just going to kind of vibe and see where it leads me. I'll check in with you guys sometime soon again, maybe Moon Day. I don't know. Until then, take care.